Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action. We started recording. You can hear a little dog yelping in the background.
Oh, who's yelping in the background?
I think it's Pearl.
Aha! Nice to know that Pearl is around. Give her a scruff for me.
I certainly will, and Pearl's very good. She's going from strength to strength in her old age and dementia.
How old is Pearl right now?
About 15.
Wow, you guys have had a lot of adventures.
She's been an absolutely great director's dog because she's so gregarious.
Yeah, right. Good with people.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for sending me PDFs of the Moviedrome guides that got put out back in the day.
Yes, by either by the BBC or by some contracted out publishing house. But yeah, and those are the texts of the original, I think, 4 seasons. I don't think we published the last season, but the other 4 that I did.
So how do I know when the text for the description, when you're writing about the movie, how do I know when it's you or when it's Nick Jones?
How to say this nicely? Nick was naughty and credited himself as co-author of the book, but none of those words are his. He was the producer of the series, the director of the episodes, and the guy who selected the films for the most part from what the BBC had under license. So and Moviedrome was his idea. Gotcha. So in that sense, I think we can forgive him for taking a co-authorial credit. Okay,
so I can assume that most of these blurbs were written by you. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and yes, I say that because sometimes it is in the first person, and that brings us to the first movie for today, because we were catching up on some of the Moviedrome selections. Johnny Guitar.
Oh yes, well that's a good movie, isn't it?
Well, I really liked it a lot, and so I was a little surprised in the blurb to see that it says, Johnny Guitar leaves me a little cold. It seems more of a camp film than a cult film. Is that still the case, or maybe you've revised?
No, I would think it's not a film that warms the heart, is it? It's very camp. It's got a beautiful production design and costume design, and some great casting.
Well, the last time we saw it was in the backyard when, as you know, I have 16 millimeter screenings back there, and it's always a crowd pleaser. The thing that I didn't, I just looked it up, and I was surprised to see that it was originally intended for 3D viewing.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And then there's a very amusing quote, Sterling Hayden saying, he said, "There is not enough money in Hollywood to lure me into making another picture with Joan Crawford, and I like money."
Oh, that's a funny quote. Yes, I suppose that could be said about others too. But I think in a way, what I said in that Moviedrome thing, the little thing that you quoted, was kind of a little bit arch of me as well, because to make such an arbitrary distinction between cult and whatever, what does it all mean anyway? I mean, I know they call the conceit of Moviedrome was that it was a cult film season, but really it wasn't. It was what was available that hadn't been broadcast because the BBC couldn't figure out how to put it in a frame. Like they could do like a bunch of French New Wave films if we were lucky and had a foreign language season, or they could do westerns or spy films or something. But it was the films they couldn't categorize, like The Long Hair of Death and Johnny Guitar. Obviously Johnny Guitar's a cowboy film, but it's not a cowboy film that will appeal to everyone. So I think the cult thing was a bit of an artifice in itself, a bit of an invention. And that was perhaps my objection to Johnny Guitar. It's a little bit artificial, like a little bit like Once Upon a Time in the West is a little bit arch at times.
Right. Were you now, when was it, what year did you go to LA?
1977.
Oh, okay, early on, yeah. Do you remember Z Channel?
Yes. Oh, yes. The Z Channel was this wonderful thing which actually did show. I think I saw the last year at Marienbad on the Z Channel. It showed foreign films, experimental films, obscure English language films. It was amazing.
Do you think it would be fair to say Moviedrome was sort of the English equivalent of Z Channel here in the States?
The Z Channel was I don't know if it was a 24-hour broadcast, but it was like it was a massive amount of material. So Moviedrome was only a very modest. It wasn't a channel really. It was just a once-a-week broadcast. But it was certainly in the same mold. I think, especially at the beginning, Moviedrome did have a fair number of foreign language films, and that was great.
Nice. Now, you briefly mentioned you mentioned a couple titles, and one of those was The Long Hair of Death, which I've never seen, but it was, that was part of the Moviedrome setup. Do you remember that one at all?
Yeah, it's an Italian horror film, very nicely photographed in black and white. Barbara Steele, an American actor who moved to Italy, as many did in the 60s, is the star. She's excellent. A creepy horror, gothic, in a castle, insanity, The Living Dead, all kinds of, just what you want, really. I think, didn't Mario Bava direct it?
No, it was Antonio Margheriti.
Antonio Margheriti, who also directed a couple of westerns, including a very, very good one called And God Said to Cain, with Klaus Kinski. Excellent, excellent Italian western. So it had a very good director. And it's very stylishly photographed. The black and white is very nice.
And I guess he was also known as Anthony Dawson.
And Anthony Davies. No, Anthony Daisies. Because Margheriti is Daisies. So he did make a couple of films where he was given that sobriquet.
Right. And he'd also directed Duck You Sucker. Or Sucka, I should say.
What, who? Margheriti? No, he only directed it, didn't he?
No, Duck You Sucker. Oh, well, it just says he's known for, so I'm going at IMDb here. I should be careful.
I think, Leone. I mean, did Duck You Sucker?
That was Leone.
Cowboy film with James Coburn and Rod Steiger, which I know that Leone kind of tried to get out of directing it, but I think the actors made him direct it in the end. Otherwise, they said they would send their stand-ins instead of coming to work.
Well, now I do want to keep Leone and Morricone aside because I think they're going to deserve their own section at some point when we talk about them.
Oh yeah.
Let's switch over to a movie that is always just timely and still I think holds up to this day. The Parallax View, 1974.
Wonderful film.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that montage that they have, so I can't remember where it falls in the movie, but
they're trying to indoctrinate impressionable, potentially violent males into being patsies for assassinations. And one of the things they do is they show them this movie with increasingly subverted imagery. It's very, very well done and very creepy. And it resembles a little bit the kind of, actually it's much more shocking and disturbing than what goes on with Little Alex and A Clockwork Orange. But it's of the same time frame, isn't it? Where they're both bombarded with these sensory media, visual campaigns and music and drugs and stuff in order to turn them into whatever they're supposed to be turned into.
It'd be a good double feature with Manchurian Candidate as well.
And of course, yes, because there's a similar programmed assassin, sleeper assassin.
It's
very good films, three very good films.
Yeah, one of our colleagues here.
And I think that the Parallax View in particular is really complicated and interesting. It obviously has there's a certain resonance because the murder of the presidential candidate, while in another location, is reminiscent of the murder of Robert Kennedy by an alleged waiter.
Right. Great opening sequence, too.
Yeah, very striking and very well done. And Alan J. Pakula, who also directed Clute. Very, very good director and very good editor.
And also, I mean, it's kind of considered a trilogy of thrillers by Alan that also includes All the President's Men. So Clute, All the President's Men, and this particular film. Yeah, The Parallax View.
Yes, because they're all about political corruption, aren't they? Because even the bad guy in Clute, the real murderer, is somebody very high up in in society. Yeah.
And that opening sequence definitely sort of reminiscent of the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, right?
Yes, and the sort of the cover-up committee, and then the reappearance of the cover-up committee at the end. It's very stylishly done film and very thought-provoking. It's good when good political thriller is also a very entertaining film. That's just excellent.
And it actually sort of dovetails pretty nicely into the next one here in our Moviedrome lineup, which is the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956.
Yes, another film whose meaning is still debated to this day. I mean, both sides of the American political spectrum, the liberals and the conservatives, would have it be their film, wouldn't they? Because what are the pods? Are the pods McCarthyite tendencies, or are the pods communists among us?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was there something in the ending is a little? It's not the one that the director originally intended, according to the notes I see that you provided for the Moviedrome guide.
Yeah, I have no idea where I got that, but I'm sure I assiduously researched it in the pages of the Monthly Film Bulletin. And
you write that apparently the film's ending is not the one the director originally intended, but like many filmmakers, Don Siegel had to confront a studio which had been taken over by mindless alien clones. To satisfy them, he shot a prologue and an epilogue that both take place in a hospital and are designed to, and I can't quite make out this other word, sweeten the pill and persuade you that things aren't as bad as the rest of the film tells you they are.
And do you remember if that was actually included in the released version of the film, or was it cut off before the film was released?
I think it was cut off.
Yeah, so they never used it. It's like the happy ending of The Great Silence. They thought better of it.
Well, you do mention in your very first note that this is a great rarity of film whose remake, the 1978 version directed by Philip Kaufman and starring Donald Sutherland, is as good as the original. And I would agree with that. I enjoy both of the Invasions very much.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a very good film. It's like Sorcerer. The remake. Wages of Fear is one of the best films ever, but Sorcerer is really, really good. And so is the remake of The Body Snatchers. The ending is again very dour, doom-laden. Just as it should be. And they're both really good films. Yeah.
Did you ever see the extended? The Sorcerer came out recently. I saw actually the.
We watched the Blu-ray of Sorcerer in Munzinger.
But with the extended, because there was an extended intro part that was not in the released version. Did we? And I don't think we. No, we did not include.
No, I only saw the regular. When we last saw it, it was the regular version.
Right, yeah. No, the Metrograph in New York, I think a year ago, showed the extended intro version, and it was very interesting. Definitely adds a lot more politics to the whole situation.
Oh, I'd be very interested to see that.
Yeah. But before we go off on Friedkin, we should stick back to the Moviedrome thing, because after Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it kind of makes sense that we would then have The Fly from 1958, directed by Kurt Newman.
Yeah, it's a nice paranoid science fiction film, isn't it? How does he get to, what turns him into a half man, half fly? What causes that dreadful phenomenon to? Must have been something nuclear, mustn't it? He went and got an X-ray at the hospital or something, or or drove.
I'm going to read. I'm just going to read from your notes from the, if I may.
Yes.
Made in 1958, The Fly stars Vincent Price, who's a very, very good actor.
Yeah.
He's been in a great many films, almost always horror films, and notably as the star of the whole Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe series. Clearly you were a fan of this one, at least.
Oh yes.
And then you also touch on the remake by David Cronenberg, of course. So. Yeah,
I was less impressed, but I didn't think the remake was as good as the original. But I mean, obviously Cronenberg films always have something interesting in them. But I didn't think it was as good as didn't have the kind of the austerity of the.
Do you happen to have a favorite Cronenberg?
I like very much The Dead Zone.
Oh, I'm trying to get that for Halloween this year.
Film.
Yeah.
And I liked Shivers. Oh, and Rabid. Rabid was really good too. So.
I'm a big Cronenberg fan, so I like all of his stuff. Yeah. Now, One from the Heart. This we're now jumping, decades into the future, into 1981, with this musical from Francis Ford Coppola, and so this one, I'm kind of surprised to see it in the Moviedrome selection, actually.
Again,
but I guess
they didn't have a musical season going. If the BBC had been running 6 musicals in succession, then they would have included One from the Heart, but they just didn't have that programmed, and so out it goes on Moviedrome.
Because that's and then from there, I guess it makes sense because there is kind of I know sometimes they're not. There's no theme necessarily, but I can certainly speak to the next one, The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. And you and I both have a very soft and fond memories of David Bowie. So, what were your impressions?
As an actor, I think maybe this is his best acting.
Yeah,
as Mr. Newton, because
it's got a good it's got a good ecological message too.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a good. I mean, it's a very interesting film, full of complexity and goes in many different directions, and has some great performances from Buck Henry and Rip Torn.
Who just passed away, and he's Rip Torn is amazing. He's great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And who's the leading lady in it? It's not Candy Clark.
Candy Clark.
Yes, she's very good in it as well. It's all the acting in it is quite good, and the director was at his peak, beautifully photographed. It's you can take issue with it and say, "Oh, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, or whatever." But it's quite a big work.
Now, you worked with a lot of musicians. Have you ever had a chance to interact with David Bowie at all? Or?
I saw him in a concert one time in England when I was a teenager. I saw him play at the Royal Court in Liverpool. And I met him after a screening of Sid and Nancy in Soho in London. I said how much I enjoyed his work over the years, and what a fan I was. And he said, of Sid and Nancy, he said, "I think this will be a trend-setting film." Oh. And that was the end of our conversation. My exchange of words with Bowie.
That's actually probably the highest compliment you can get from one of the most famous trendsetters in the world.
Well, actually, I think it was. It was very. It was high. It was a high compliment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do roll into, of course, Sergio Leone now with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You are, where would you put this in the universe of spaghetti westerns? You've written a book on the subject, so...
Oh, yeah, I've written a book which will soon have its second edition, I'm pleased to say. So everybody has to buy a second copy because it's so different.
Well, have you added, how many movies have you added to it, or is it just...
There's a number of other movies, and I think there's long pieces on about 6 previously unaddressed films, or films that had only got given a kind of a slighting glance, including Corbucci's last Western, which is called What Am I Doing in the Middle of the Revolution, with Vittorio Gassman, which is actually quite good, surprisingly good. So, where to put The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? I think it would have to be in top 10, wouldn't it? Have to be, bubbling up around there. I don't think it's as good as For a Few Dollars More or Once Upon a Time in the West. But, I mean, it's so entertaining and there's so much brilliance in it,
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic film.
So I know that while you were here at CU Boulder as one of the faculty here at the Department of Cinema Studies and Moving Image Arts.
Excellent school.
And I wish you'd stayed, Alex, but I understand why you had to leave us. But if you had stayed, I have a feeling you eventually would have gotten to, teach a class on Westerns. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, but I think Ernesto has taught a class on Westerns, hasn't he?
And he's here doing that. But you certainly would have been a great teacher for that. And I'm just curious what some of the how you would have arranged. Would you have gone chronologically with how you screened your Westerns, or would you how would you have put together the syllabus? I guess is what I'm asking.
I'm pretty plodding. I normally chronological is normally good, isn't it? Unless there's a reason to break things up into sections, or into sectors. Like say, if you're doing introduction to film, you could break it up into, theories of film and cinematography, editing, production design, like that. But otherwise, I think chronological is just, you show them the Great Train Robbery and go from there.
Is that where you start then? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You start with the Great Train Robbery?
I guess so. I mean, it's one of the first narrative films, if not the first. But it's one of the first, and it's a Western.
But you're not necessarily a fan of the silent movie era, right? No,
but if you're going to kind of do an explication of the West in it, I mean, one doesn't have to like it all, but I mean, it still deserves some attention. And I think that it's not too long either. I mean, the Great Train Robbery is only 3 or 4 minutes long or something. It's not very long.
No, it's short for sure. What movie would you end with?
Well, that's a good question, really, isn't it? Because there are contemporary Westerns. New Westerns get made every year. So, and did the Class C, the multi-part Coen Brothers Western? Do you end with that? Or do you end with a somewhat? Do you end with Brokeback Mountain?
Or where do you fall on Unforgiven?
Oh, I think I'm not very fond of Eastwood as a director. I think Eastwood's an excellent actor in Leone's films. Very, very good. And also in Don Siegel's films, he's an excellent actor as well. But I don't think as a director he doesn't really warm my heart as a director or make me glad that cinema was invented.
Well, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I know we only have a few minutes, so I'm going to end with one more Western that was in your Moviedrome selection, and that one would be One-Eyed Jacks by Marlon
excellent.
Brando.
Well, I don't know what I said about it then, but I think it's just great.
What if you were going to motivate people to see One-Eyed Jacks? Because it's 141 minutes, and people are pretty jealous of, guard their time.
Me too. I hate long films usually. I hate long films. And I hate films
I don't think you've ever
actors.
directed a long movie.
No, I'm trying not to. But I hate films directed by actors. I don't think actors should be allowed to direct films. Because they're taking away jobs from directors. But I must say, and also the transitions are the stupidest transitions ever. They're like every transition is like a dissolve, like a really bad Western. From one scene to the next, to the next, to the landscape, next scene, dissolve. It's absolutely garbage filmmaking. But it looks so good. It is so well written and so well acted, and the costumes are so fine, And the direction is very good. The direction of the actors, of course, is excellent. And Brando's direction of himself is excellent. His performance is excellent. There's one scene where he's come looking for Dad Longworth. He wants to kill him, and they, what you looking for him for? And he goes like, and he's not even making any sense. He's not even speaking proper English, but you know he radiates hatred for Dad Longworth and the intensity of his revenge.
Speaking of radiating hatred, and I mean, I'm just reading your notes right now for One Night Jacks, and I have to add, again, I'm quoting you on this. The first treatment was written by a television director called Sam Peckinpah, who hoped to make it his first feature film. Then Marlon Brando became involved, and immediately Peckinpah was out. Brando chose as the director an up-and-coming guy by the name of Stanley Kubrick. And then it goes from there.
That's all. That's all true. And Peckinpah's whole oeuvre when he became a director was about betrayal. Betrayal by former partners. Allies who fall out. Rebels who betray each other, and the rebel code. And that's perhaps what he felt he had experienced. But how interesting to think of a script. The script you can find online too. More than one draft by Sam Peckinpah of the original.
When you say the script can be found online, because I think in your notes you make a mention of the fact that the original version that was directed by Brando ended up being like 4 hours long or something.
12 hours long or something. I mean, they had an incredibly long cut of the original version, and he just didn't want to bring it down. He just wanted to keep it long. But sometimes, he wasn't really a director, and I think maybe he got bored in the cutting room. He didn't know what to do in the cutting room. But he certainly knew how to
12
direct
hours
actors.
to cut.
Yeah. A little bit like the last
funny.
movie, Dennis Hopper's film, because I think Dennis was kind of like, didn't really enjoy the cutting room that much. He loved being on set, and he loved directing actors. The actors was the thing, and I'm sure for Brando, even more so. And he was just blessed with a great cinematographer and great locations, and picked such a good cast.
And the last note you mentioned on One Night Jacks is that there were two different endings, and that Brando appeared to have actually allowed the cast and crew to vote on the ending. Yeah,
there was a vote, wasn't there? They took a vote as to whether he should win or lose in the gunfight. That's interesting. I don't quite know. I mean, there's been some discussion as to how democratic the vote was, but I think that it's still a very interesting idea that they did that.
Right.
They let the crew and the cast and the extras all vote on whether Marlon should live or die.
Well, I think we're almost out of, we are out of time for our segment today. I have one parting question for you, because it's, I'm just eager to know. For the cover of Moviedrome, the guide, the second guide, it looks like a picture of you with elf ears. Is that right?
With what ears?
With elfish ears.
Maybe I've got fake ears on them. Maybe they've painted them on me, or am I wearing headphones? Or
no. You look like an elf. Like you look like Spock.
Maybe they gave me Spock
a Vulcan
ears
or
for
an
that.
elf.
Let's see. Oh, you know what look at that. They must have tweaked it, mustn't they? In the because I don't remember them giving me elf ears, but now that you mention it, they definitely are. They might have used Photoshop to achieve that.
When you did your intros, did they would you do little sort of skits for those intros?
That is those two frames on the cover of the second Moviedrome guide are frames from the title sequence. Because each episode or each movie was preceded by a little Moviedrome kind of logo type sequence, followed by my introduction, followed by the film. And so that's one of the introductions that they did. And they would spend a lot more time on introductions and have more kind of effects and little models and stuff. So that's me doing the slate over one of the models that appeared in that title sequence.
Do you think those will ever? Is there any reason why those have not been assembled so that they'd be available as a box set? Or it seems like that would be an obvious,
Again, it's licensing issues, isn't it? Because the BBC had back in the 1980s certain films under license. but the licenses would only last for a certain number of years, and they might not include the right to distribute them in other media.
Of course.
So in answer to your question, Pablo, it's unlikely that the BBC or anybody indeed would own all of those films and come to an agreement to box them up. It would be interesting though, because Nick Jones did a really, really good job. He had very, very good taste, and some of the films he picked were pretty tremendous.
Well, it's just sad that, because I know that just the intros, not even the movies, but just the Moviedrome intros used to be available. I remember seeing a few of them, and then all of a sudden when I tried to revisit them, they were all gone. They were no longer even on YouTube in any way,
Well, I imagine they get
form.
pulled down off YouTube because of copyright. They have these robot bots that just anything that contains any kind of what they imagine to be copyright material, they send a takedown notice.
Right.
And then quite likely fair use would permit a little introduction to a film, with a couple of clips from the film or a couple of stills from the film to exist on the internet. That might be completely legal, but that doesn't stop the studios and the record companies sending out these bots to get everything taken down. But then people put stuff up again, so they may reappear.
Well, hopefully it'll be archived somewhere. If you ever come across any materials, send them on to me. And Alex, I want to thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon, and we'll pick it up next week if you're up for it.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations. Don't forget to go out there and watch movies in a larger-than-home venue. It's what brings us all together to see movies the way they were meant to be seen, on the big screen, as we sit next to strangers, neighbors, and friends.